Today's guest is Omer Malchin. Omer was the CMO of Netflix back before the streaming wars and has worked on brands like Diageo, Wix, and Reali. More recently, he runs an agency called Moxie Method, which has worked on top brands like Looker, Melio, SkinnyGirl, and even VC brands like Sequoia. Here are three things that I learned from Omer: the difference between a vendor and a true partner when it comes to marketing agencies, serendipity through diversity of ideas and customers, and a structured process for naming your product or business. So let's get into it. Well, Omer, thank you for joining me today. This is going to be a really fun one. I'm super excited about having you on the show and talking about all your experiences over the last, 25, 30 years in marketing. So,
Something like that.
you know, yeah, I'm going to jump straight into our first question, which is, you've been a CMO, you've been an agency owner now, you've worked with companies and startups of all sizes. If you could imagine a dream customer today, who would be that dream customer and why?
Okay, it's a good question. I, the dream customer will be one that has unlimited budget and realistic expectation. I still didn't find one like that. Even when I was a client, I wasn't that. So I don't think that that will happen. So I guess the second best thing that I can think of is someone who never calls us a vendor. Somehow or even not an agency. I think myself more as a partner. At least that's what I want to think. And when I hear, hey, Omer or Moxie, the vendor, it makes me feel weird, and it brings back some memories of me, being the one who's hiring and firing agencies. And when I think of it as a vendor, it basically means that they are, outsiders. And when I think of something that is more of a, partner, and I'm not necessarily that we're always partners, but something that, drives deeper collaboration and a natural extension to the team, to me, that is a winning thing. So, better work, more creative, innovation without, formalities, and doing, better work. So it's easier for me to say what I don't want. I don't want someone to call me a vendor and the rest, then becomes better.
That's a really interesting point, and I had heard one of these really large company CMOs talk about this on a podcast recently, where she was kind of saying that agencies and partners get a bad name, but if you can figure out how to leverage an agency and a partner and become true partners, that the amount of creativity that unlocks is unimaginable. And I completely agree with that. I think a lot of in-house teams or companies don't really know how to partner well with agencies. What do you think that looks like? What is a good partnership model where you bring in an agency or a partner, as you describe it? Like, what is the thing that makes it a true partnership?
You need to, as the agency or the outsider, you need to be smart enough about the business. I guess it's a combination of two things. On one hand, you need to know enough about the business almost as an insider, because if you don't know enough and you don't feel and you're not perceived as to some extent an insider, at least in terms of the knowledge that you have, then people will by default think of you as an outsider, which then means that they need to start giving you very clear briefs and all that, and it almost brings with it a judgment. They don't know enough about it and all that. So I think that you need to know enough on one hand. And on the other hand, you want to leverage the fact that you're an outsider to stay fresh on your perspective of things, because sometimes if you're an insider, you're drinking the Kool-Aid to some extent, not always, but you know what you know, and this is how you think. So knowing enough, but leveraging the fact that you're not 100% inside to come up with something that is, distinct, that maybe cannot happen within the inside.
I love that perspective, and I think that terminology of being a true insider or being perceived as a true insider is essential. And obviously, the onus is on the agency and the partner, right? So even for us as Paramark, when we work with our clients, if we don't understand the business, if we don't understand the go-to-market motion, then figuring out how to measure the impact on the business of all your marketing investments is not really going to be easy. So I love that.
That this is also why almost always we have like the first thing we want to do is, I call it like a discovery process, whether it's we want to extract as much information from whoever we work with, whether it's by asking them or by looking at information around us, looking at the the landscape and all that, so that by the time we start doing the work, we know enough so that we can do good work versus getting in a suboptimal way.
No, that's great. And one of the personal things that I do with every single one of our customers, I try to use their product on day one. Whether it's a consumer product, whether it's a business product, like really get into the product, sign up for it, buy it, order it, and use it. And that gives us a very different perspective about the customer. Okay, I have a somewhat sort of controversial question for you. I don't know if it's controversial, but it's a fun question. So, when I was going through your deck and your website, you had something like your agency, Moxie Method works on everything, right? D2C, CPG, B2C, DTC, P2P. You had like a fun little play on those acronyms there. And isn't that the exact opposite of what you learn in marketing, that you have to pick a lane and niches make riches and differentiate or die, like this whole idea of like pick a lane and really go narrow on that. Why did you decide to go pretty broad and in all different directions with Moxie?
Yeah. So the reason we do all these is not just because I like acronyms, but there's another reason for it. The real the reality is that despite what it looks like, we actually don't do everything. We're focused on what we do, but not necessarily on who we do it for. And I think that that's the difference. So we are good at some things and we're not good at other things. But the things that we're good at, is about developing and executing a good, effective brand strategy. And we like to do it across the board. Now, obviously, of course, if there's a space that I know really well or that we know really well, and we have someone we're working with there's less of a learning curve. We know it. We can jump into it very quickly. But in some other cases, like we discussed just a few minutes ago, sometimes you don't know enough about it, and you bring that fresh perspective, and you learn enough about it to be dangerous enough and add value. I think that the other thing I would say is that there are advantages of doing things without being in a niche. I would say a couple of things here. One, used to be that B2B and B2C were totally different worlds. To me, the world is changing a little bit, and I do it for a long enough time to even see it, within my history. The B2B used to be salespeople, relationship. Let's take the prospect to a golf game, whatever it is, and all that. Today, a lot of B2B companies, the B to me is a bunch of C's together. There is a C. The C is maybe inside an office, but that's a person, and you need to get to understand that persona or the different personas within a company. And if you think this way, and also these people in companies, the B2B persona, they want better experiences today. It's not like it used to be in the past. Everybody has good experiences. Everybody's using an iPhone. Everybody is and you need to treat them as as customers only. And so I like that, and this is why we like to do obviously both B2C and B2B and all that. I also believe, as an agency at least, that there's how would I say it, like serendipity through diversity. You work on I don't know, I'm trying to think, there's like cross-pollination of ideas. I work in the morning on a soap bar client, and the next Zoom meeting that I have right after that is with an ag tech company. No connection at all, but somehow there's a light bulb, something happens. You thought about something that's totally out of the box for the next project that you're doing, and it just helps in cross-pollinating. So I do see it in a way as a helpful thing. So I think that, just to summarize, we do focus on what we know, but we do it across different verticals. And I think that the fact that we do it across different verticals helps us in a way to stay, creative.
I love that. I love the serendipity through diversity that's gonna go on a billboard somewhere. And I also agree with you that this notion that businesses are somehow so different from human beings when in reality businesses are just a collection of human beings, right? They're a collection of consumers who are both, maybe they think they're very rational because they're in a professional environment, but you and I know that the reality is that it's still the same principles that apply in consumer marketing that also get results in B2B. Um, okay, so one really famous brand that you had, the opportunity to work on was Looker, and I actually want to talk about that experience. That name is brilliant, right? If you take a step back and think about that name and how sort of critical or well aligned it is with the product and the utility of what it provides to businesses, it's brilliant. How did you come up with that name? What was your process for naming or the brand strategy behind Looker? When did you get involved? How did you work with the team to make that happen?
Yeah. I can talk about naming in general. Looker happened in 2012, so it's 12 years ago. So I have to go back and remember. I do remember the basic work that we did there. Looker basically at the time was a startup, and the idea for the name and the brand, the identity and all that was about a product that allows you to look at your business in a new way, in a way that's worth looking at. And so, the name hints to what it does without being over descriptive. I recall other companies at that time, business objects and all that, which are the name is very, functional. And so we tried to elevate it and take it to a different level, basically. Something you can poke around with, explore, and have a little bit of fun with it as well. Obviously, it's Google now. I'm proud because usually when Google buys a company, they immediately also change everything about it. They kept the name and they even kept the logo. They just changed the colors to be Google colors, but it's still somewhere there. So that's nice. But maybe I can talk to you a little bit about, like, in general, about what we do with names when we work on it, because um, so naming is one of the areas where we try to add some, I don't know if science is the right word, but some analytical thinking to the process. Obviously, we want to make sure we understand the brand and the story and all that. Without that, the naming exercise is just a waste of time. So that, of course, we do. But in addition to that, for different reasons, we're trying to make it, like a mix of, art and science. The problem with naming and with logos and colors and all that, everybody has an opinion. You don't have an opinion about a line of code, but you do have an opinion about a name or a logo and all that. You, me, and everybody else, basically. So we're trying to avoid the notion of popularity contest. We're never doing hey, let's all come to the room. Where's the whiteboard throwing names and all that? What we do, we try to be a bit more methodical about it. So we're coming up with, based on the brand strategy, we're coming up with an internal brief for us. And all that is shareable with whoever we work with, because we want to make sure we're aligned. Talks about things like, for example, the type of name. Do we want to be a functional name like Whole Foods? Do we want to be, I don't know, an experiential name like, I don't know, DoorDash? Do we want to be more evocative, like Apple, or do we want to totally invent a name like Google? And there's pros and cons to each one, but if you understand the brand strategy, then you can decide, what type of name it is. So we kind of go through that and we explain the rationale for why we want to go. When we'll start looking for name, we'll look only for functional and evocative names, for example, and we will not touch invented names. We agree on all that ahead of time. We also agree on, like, we try to understand the brand, like a name, if you do it right, will stay forever or for a long time. Maybe so you need to understand not what the company is, only what the company is now, but also what the company wants to be. So the vision and the essence of the brand is really important. It's also important because you want to create like a brand architecture, a naming architecture. Will there be products under that? Is it going to be a house of brands, like a P&G type company, or is it a branded house? Salesforce, everything is Salesforce X, Salesforce Y, etc. That helps us in thinking about it, even if we don't know what the names of the products will be, but we already understand that there might be something that is tagged onto the name. So all these things we agree on, and then we come up with a list of how would I say, criteria for each name. And again, this is like not a cookie cutter. We might do it differently when we work on Looker versus when we work on another brand. Based on the strategy, there are different things that might be important. We give them a weight. And then when we start coming up with names, we internally measure them against all these criteria, and we give a score to each name. Now, it doesn't mean that a name that got 87 points is better than a name that got 85, but names that got 50 are probably, we're not even presenting. Names that got, a higher number are the ones that we're presenting, so that's where the art and the science kind of like work. The other thing that I would say is, we present the names with the rationale. We don't just say, hey, here's the name. We say, here's the name and here's why we think it's good. All that work comes together with the name. And we often also like to provide a visual context for the name. So sometimes, people see it. It's not that we do a logo for each name, but we want to show it in a way that is visually interesting so that they can understand what it might look like. And when we have a short list of like the top 3 names or so, we start to bring them more to life a little bit, so that the person on the other side can understand it almost as if it's now the brand. The last thing I would say about naming, I try to always avoid presenting it on Friday, because when I present it on Friday, everybody goes home and shows it to their kids, their partner, and all that. And then we get a lot of feedback on people that don't even know who the real target is. So that's it.
That's a great tip. Now I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life. Never present an idea on a Friday. I like it. So on that note, right? So Looker obviously must have been a great experience, and I agree, right? Just the fact that Google has kept it around and even sort of adopted that name for a bunch of things is an awesome sort of testament to the value of a good name and a good brand. Maybe, switching to the opposite, which is, do you remember an example of a marketing strategy or a campaign that completely didn't work, didn't go as planned, and you had to, adapt it to meet the goals for that customer, or even, if it was from an in-house experience? Can you talk about sort of what that looks like, and how do you deal with that type of of an experience as an experienced marketer?
I'm sorry, just I want to make sure I clarify. It's like on a marketing strategy that came up that we tried to initiate or launch and it didn't work, or is it specific to the name?
Yeah, let me repeat the question and get more specific there. So, is there an example outside of naming? Like, let's just take a step back and think about, all of your experiences across marketing strategy. Can you think about an example that was like a colossal bust? We all have had some of those, right? And how you adapted to then sort of turn that back into a winner, right? I'm basically thinking about this as not everything that we do is going to work on the first go. So what's your take on dealing with those types of situations in marketing?
Okay, so can I answer with an example or two? Is that okay? Okay, got it. So I need to think about something that totally failed. I'm sure there are, but I can think about things that we tried, didn't work as well, and then we did something to fix it. And I'll give you maybe two examples that are very different from each other. And as a matter of fact, those two examples that come to mind right now in my head are when I was, a CMO or marketing person on the other side. And, if we have more time, I'm sure I can come up with others. But one of them was from my days at Netflix when I was running marketing there, when the company was still young. And, the vision was always about changing the way people consume entertainment, movies, and all that. This was pre-streaming capabilities. Um, and so what we did, we we still had like an enemy called Blockbuster, and they weren't great in terms of an experience for customers. And we came up with a new form factor, DVDs, not VHS, and shipping a la carte the DVDs to people's homes. And it was great, but the problem, if you think about consuming movies, it's a little bit of a spontaneous thing. You don't plan exactly what you'll watch, in the evening or tomorrow and all that. And so what happened with the a la carte model that we had, people liked it, but then we had to kind of reacquire the customer every time they wanted to see a movie, because they returned the movie and then we had to tell them again, hey, remember Netflix? $5, rent a movie, you'll get it in 2 days. And so they would often prefer to just go to Blockbuster, as much as they hate it, because it's across the street. They can get it now because they need to watch a movie now. And we were trying to, and I can't take full credit to it, but I was part of the team. We were trying to think about ways to, break that system. We still believe that our strategy, our overall brand strategy is right, but something in the execution needed to change. And, the paradigm needed to change. And so we ended up with what's now sounds like whatever, almost like AI. Everybody knows it, which is subscription, right? And a subscription model. And at the time, subscription was very new and innovative. And we came up with a subscription model where basically you always have you have a queue of videos, you have always four DVDs that are either at your house or on your way, or you ship them back, but at minimum you have 1, 2, or 3 at home. So in a way, it's a proxy to streaming. You always have something to watch. You always send one and you get the next one. And when we did it, we kind of changed the model overnight, suddenly things started to work. Yes, we lost, I can't remember exactly, 20 or 30% of our customers overnight, but we kept 70% of them on a recurring monthly, subscription model. And we made them happier because they suddenly had movies to watch when they needed. So that's one example.
Can I pause you, Omer, on that example? That is, it sounds obvious in hindsight, but I mean, that must have been a real challenge internally in thinking about the business model, and that insight of, the insight that consumers want to have, or consumers want to make an impromptu decision, was a really powerful one. How did you sort of come up with that insight? Like what led to that even sort of kernel of thinking?
Yeah. And again, this was a team effort, right? So I was running marketing there, but I do think that, we talked to a lot of customers. We saw what they're saying. We tried to be close to, the first few customers, or whatever, thousands of customers that we had. We also, I mean, it's funny because in this specific world, we're also all customers. I was a customer too. I was getting movies from Blockbuster and all that. And I remember it was very easy to understand that the impulse of watching a movie is critical. And so critical that people were okay in a way, because there was no alternative, to go through a really bad experience. I don't know if you remember, but when you used to go to a Blockbuster, you basically most movies that people wanted were new releases. And if you go on a Thursday or Friday evening to a Blockbuster, all the shelf with the new releases is empty. No one can get it. So then you go to the back, to the back inventory to pick another movie that you don't really want, but that's all you have. And then you forget to return it on time and you pay a late fee and all that. And despite all these things that basically mean bad experience, people did it because that was what it is. So I think that it was clear that that's what we need to change. But knowing whether subscription will work or not was kind of a bit scary, right? Because we still have the good business, and suddenly changing it to, hey, the only option you have is subscription was a big decision. But yeah, ended up working.
Ended up working really well. What an amazing story. I know you had another example. You wanna go into that one?
Yeah, I'll give you another example. Now I can think of others, but like I'll give you another example from a very different world. So I was before Netflix, I was running marketing for, again, internally within Diageo, which is like a large company, for Bailey's Irish Cream. So like a very big brand in the alcoholic beverages, a brand that a lot of people love. It's one of the brands that is loved by many people because it's almost like a candy, right? It's sweet, it's great, it makes you feel good. And we came up with an amazing, a really successful campaign in general that we called Yum. Yum was basically about the second your tongue touches the Bailey's flavor, and usually that's the second where people say, oh, yum, or great, and they have a nice face as the experience is great. We created a campaign, and advertising and everything, and everything felt right. And when we also researched it, people said, yes, that's exactly what I feel about it. The problem was that and that Bailey's customers drink it only once in a while, usually during the holidays or during a celebration and all that. So we didn't have the cadence of people drinking it more often. And so the whole campaign was, and so we knew that we have something that feels right, but we couldn't make it more of a habit for people to drink it, the same way that they maybe drink, I don't know, a beer or, a gin and tonic or something like that. So it was a dilemma because we knew that we have the right strategy, but we still can't make it, what we need it to be. So what we did, we added to the campaign the idea of Baileys and coffee, because coffee is something that people drink, okay, more basically daily or occasionally. It's not that we were looking for people to drink it daily, but we wanted it to be more, to give more reasons for people to drink it. And we knew Baileys and coffee was one of the things that people do, but we wanted to bring it to life. So the campaign was all about people's faces the second they touch the Baileys, touches their mouth and tongue. We added a mug with a face, not a real person, a Bailey cup with a face into the campaign, and it was all about Baileys and coffee. And in addition to that, just to make it more tangible, we also created those Baileys cup and started selling them, like vintage cups and all that. And that, when we started launching it and incorporating into all of our creative work and execution, whether it's in store or in advertising and all that, suddenly we started seeing usage going up and recurring users buying Baileys much more often. So the metrics changed. And so again, it was a good example where we were stuck, and with something interesting, we were able to unlock it.
That's such a great example. And this idea of, habit forming or frequency or looking for use cases where you really get into, a high frequency sort of use cases is critical for so many consumer brands. And I also love what you talked about in terms of tying it back to metrics. And that's a nice sort of segue to talk about measurement. You obviously have, seen Diageo, Netflix, Looker, lots of other brands over the last 30 years. How do your clients think about measurement today, right? So in this day and age where things are getting a little bit harder, and we all know that marketing measurement is quite complicated, what do you recommend folks do to measure the impact of brand marketing, brand strategy? How do you think about it? How do you reason about it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. And you're the expert here, so maybe I should ask you. But I can tell you at least what we're doing. The um, in our world, because again, we're doing work that is mainly related to brand, and we're not only we I mean, we do performance marketing, but usually people don't come to us just because of performance marketing. And so some of the things that we do, at least on paper, feel less measurable. But for me personally, measurement should be tied to the brand. Like in a perfect world, I would say we measure key brand perceptions pre and post a brand change or a brand activity, and then we determine if we have achieved the brand objective. So, and we do it in different ways. In the past, when I was again going back to Bailey's, we did omnibus research, and I remember for someone like me was a key KPI that we wanted to make sure that people say yes, it is for someone like me. Today's maybe NPS or other things like that. Often we'll show a brand marketing um, effort to one group of consumers, but not showing it to another group, with all the other conditions kind of being the same. And from there, we try to measure the difference, in the different metrics between the two groups to determine the impact of the marketing when we work. And I'm trying to think about like the things that are a bit trickier, right? When we think about I don't know, events, we'll try and like come up with something like a QR code or so, where we get the name of the person, but we follow up with them later on, or the brand follows up with them later on, asking them for the post event behavior, to see what they think about it like a week later, or did something change. So we're trying to quantify these things to the best ability that we have. I would say that in my mind, the way I see it is, a lot of people know how to measure performance marketing, but not necessarily brand marketing. And I think that both need to be on the table. And I also think that if sometimes you just focus on the performance marketing part, and you measure everything bottom up in a way, you might optimize things. They're maybe 50% good, and you optimize them to be 60% successful. But if you measure the idea from the top, and you feed that into performance marketing, maybe the starting point is not 50%, but it's 75%, and you can get to 90%. So I believe that they need to work together.
That's great. I couldn't agree more, Omer. And one of the things that I tell all of our customers is, we've put this um, distinction between brand marketing and performance marketing. But in reality, marketing is marketing. It's about building strong, mental associations between, right, your brand and the job to be done for that consumer, right? When a Bailey's customer thinks yum, and every time they think yum, or every time they think, I want to have coffee, I probably want to think about, putting some Bailey's Irish in there. And that, right, is that is what performs. And one of the famous quotes from, I think it was Charlie Munger, who said, brand is the only thing that compounds. And I was like, that is amazing, hearing from like a world famous investor, about brand. So I'm a big believer in combining brand and performance. Um, okay, on that note, so you've had a long career. You've worked with large companies, small companies. With Moxie Method now, your agency does some really awesome work. Um, as somebody who's really seen a lot of success, both through your own brands and also with your clients' brands, what motivates you now to keep going, and what are you looking to achieve in your next 5 to 10 years? What's the next big challenge for you, and from a professional career development perspective?
Okay. Um, I'm always sensitive to cliches. So I would say the one thing that I'm not is, the person that says, hey, I want to impact the world and make it better. I don't know that I'm good enough to do that, but I do want to create exceptional experiences that enrich people's daily lives in a positive way. And that can be that can happen by interacting with the right brands. If I can work with brands that I like, it'll be great. And making life a little bit easier and more enjoyable for their customers. Like, I don't know, my own KPIs, I would say, are um, beyond financials and clicks. Delight, joy, smile a little bit every day, unexpected surprises. Those are the things that make me motivated. When I have a project like that and I feel that there's an opportunity to do it, this is what motivates me. And it does better for some people also, but it just makes me feel good.
Oh, I love that answer. There's nothing cliched about it, right? That's what life is all about anyway, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
that, yeah, exactly. That's a great way to wrap up. And I want to give a quick shout out to everybody who's listening. If you're in the market for a partner, not a vendor, a partner for your brand strategy and for really sort of shaping your narrative and bringing your ideas to life, I couldn't recommend Omer more. So please reach out to him on LinkedIn and check out their work, their Moxie Method. Yeah, Omer, thank you so
Yeah,
much
thank
for
you.
being on this show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
and
problem. Thank you for having me.
absolutely, we'll do it again when the time is right. And thanks
That
again.
sounds good.
Have a good
Yeah,
one.
thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, there you go, folks. That was Omer, ex-CMO of Netflix, and now the owner of Moxie Method, a brand agency. We'll have many more fun and insightful conversations, so tune in again next week. See you then.